Good morning. Welcome to the You Law in Black and White podcast. I'm your host, Aaminah Barber. I'm not joined by anyone today. It's just going to be me, and it's going to be a shorter podcast episode. But we're just going to talk about a few things, just a casual chat between me and yourselves. Now, before we do start, just a little disclaimer. I want to make it clear that the views and opinions expressed on this podcast are my own and they do not reflect the University of Law at all. The information provided in this podcast is for general informational purposes only and should not be considered as professional advice. If you do require expert advice, it is encouraged that you consult with relevant experts or professionals. So today's topic of discussion is going to be confidence, what it means to trust yourselves, and then we're going to end with a few tips and tricks. I don't want this to come across as preachy, so I am going to try and keep it short, keep it sweet, very straight to the point. I know a lot of podcasts like this can sometimes come across as kind of preachy, and we want to avoid that because I'm sure a lot of these things that we're going to be talking about are things you already know. But it's a good sometimes to just listen to another podcast. Sometimes it's good for someone else to say it to you because your brain will understand it or take it in a little differently. So that's the point of today's episode. So, what does it mean to trust yourself? What does it mean to know yourself? And I know a lot of people touch on this when they say, like, you can't do certain things until you know yourself, until you love yourself. It brings self-confidence, etc. And it's all true, but what does it mean? So trusting yourself means knowing what's right for you. It means listening to your gut. It's that little nagging feeling at the back of your head or that feeling in the pit of your stomach when you're doing something and you think, is this right? Is this wrong? Or this is scary. Should I be doing this? And sometimes you shouldn't be doing that thing that you're doing. Other times it's just you getting out your comfort zone and your brain not knowing what the outcome is going to be, and so chances are you'd probably go to worst case scenario, or you'll have this fear and adrenaline running through your body and you'll think, oh my god, what am I doing? Is this right? Is this wrong? And that's a really normal reaction to have. But stepping out your comfort zone usually brings that feeling, that emotion out. And so sometimes we can kind of second guess it and think, well, I have this feeling, should it feel like this? I feel like maybe if this was the right thing to do, I'd feel a little more secure, things like that. But often it's right. Sometimes you do think that, but sometimes it really is just you trying new things, and because you've stepped out your comfort zone, you don't know how to react. So sometimes it's weighing up, what am I doing? What could the outcome be? Why is my brain going to worst case scenario? And realistically, is that even going to happen? Because sometimes worst case scenario never actually plays out. It's really just that other end of the extreme that your brain goes to, that your body kind of ends up in, kind of like a flight or fight response. So let's talk about some of the things that we can do to help build that trust within ourselves. So, being kind to yourself is a big one. I know at this moment in time it's June, we're heading towards July. So, soon it's going to be exam results, or it'll be exam season for some people, or for others, it'll be kind of the start of something new. I know of some people who look at the year from a September to September perspective. And so you might want to think, oh, I'll try new things. And being kind to yourself is really important whilst you're in this space, because chances are you'll probably be thinking, oh, I've made all these mistakes, I've probably done absolutely awful on my exams. Or you'll think to yourself, oh, why did I do this? Why did I say that? Kind of thinking about everything that you've done wrong. Your brain may be exacerbating the situation and making it worse than what it actually is. And you then kind of end up in this position where you'll put yourself down, or you'll say things about yourself that aren't really kind. And that's not a good thing to do, because that diminishes that trust that you have within yourself. And I think the big thing to remember is to give yourself the grace that you would give other people. When you're working in teams, when you're building on your social skills, when you bump into someone in the train station, or even in your day-to-day lives like that, if someone were to jump into the queue whilst you're getting a coffee, or someone bumps into you at the train station, or whilst you're walking, there's a bit of a situation there, or maybe whilst you're shopping, like little things like that, things happen, and you'll give the other person grace. You'll say, oh, it's okay, don't worry about it, or excuse me, do you mind if I kind of get past? You'll say things like that, and there's a level of grace that is given because there's a level of understanding there, and that's the level of understanding you should give yourself. So maybe you didn't do as well as what you wanted, but maybe there are other factors that you're not taking into consideration when you're thinking that. Maybe there's other circumstances or situations around it that now that it's happened and you're many months later, you're thinking, oh, well, it wasn't that big of a deal then. Maybe I should have focused more on my studies. You've had enough time to digest it. And so big things that seem like a really big deal then kind of lose their meaning sometime later on. And so when you think back, you think, but I should have done more. I should have done this. I should have done that. But you probably did the best you could given your circumstances, given your situation, given the feedback you've gotten. So giving yourself that grace means accepting it, whatever it is, even when you're disappointed. You did your best. What more could you have done realistically? And is it really something so many months later to be disappointed about, to the extent that you are? I mean, I've just recently got my one set of results for one exam. And I was disappointed because I wanted better, but I also know how much growth I had to get the result that I did, which in itself is a really big deal. And even though I've done another exam and all I can think about is everything that I've done wrong, your brain works differently when you're in certain circumstances. So when you're in an exam, the way your body reacts is different. When you're in a new situation and meeting new people, networking, starting your business, going to a new gym, trying a new exercise, your brain does things differently, your body reacts differently, and so the outcome is different. That doesn't mean that you've done something wrong or that you didn't work hard enough. It's just different to what you expected. And sometimes you can do everything right and still not be satisfied, but there's that understanding that you give yourself. I did the best I could. I'm grateful for what I have. I couldn't have done more even if I tried. Moving on to the second thing is seeing things through. Now, this one's kind of hard because when you're doing something new, when you're studying a topic you don't want to study because you struggle with it, or if you're just in a really uncomfortable and unfortunate situation, like you have to have a difficult conversation with someone, such as a friend or a roommate or your partner or something like that, it's really important to A, be respectful, but B, see it through. So do the difficult thing, because often you'll be a much stronger person after. You'll be a bit more confident in yourself. You'll think, oh, I could do this. I didn't know I could do that, but now that I know, I think I'll be okay. And that follow through, going through that really difficult thing and doing that thing that you don't want to do, is often like a mini obstacle that's standing in your way from doing something bigger, but also it can be a little stepping stone for you to move on to something better. And it's those little things that build your confidence overall. It's not something that you don't wake up with it one morning and think, oh, everything's going to be great, I'm going to be perfect. My confidence is like at a 9. I can trust myself, everything's perfect, it's great, I'm always like this, it's always going to be like this. Because you'll go through phases. And so when you are at a particular point in your life or at a particular phase and you think, I can't do this, this is too hard, seeing that difficult thing through, trying that difficult thing is honestly going to be the best thing for you, because you'll have this moment in your head where you think, oh, I just hyped it up, it was nothing and I just made a big deal out of it. Or it could have been a really big deal and you saying to yourself, well, I got to the other side, I did it, I'm in a better position now, I know more now than what I did then. And also you'll think back to these moments when you have to do something else that's difficult. you'll think, oh, but I did it then, so I can do it now. And that's really important for you to say to yourself, I've done it before, I can do it now. I've been through something before, I can go through even more now. And that doesn't mean you put yourself in a difficult position constantly just to test yourself, but to do things that you didn't think you were capable of doing is a really great way of trusting yourself and saying it in your head, like, okay, I can do this, I can do this, I can do this, kind of like an affirmation. So let's talk about building your confidence really quickly. Building your confidence is allowing yourself to fail and be rejected. It's saying to yourself, it didn't go the way I wanted, I'm disappointed, but I can always try harder. I can try another avenue. Maybe I can do this way. Kind of thinking of different ways to do things, accepting that rejection, but keep moving forward. Don't just stop where you are. And I personally believe that rejections are redirections. So you'll be redirected into something that's better for you. At one point, I wanted to do science at A level. I didn't get the grades that I needed in maths. And so I couldn't pursue medicine or some kind of scientific field. And a part of me does think, oh, but if I had, what could I have done? But I'm also on the BPC now, and I'm really happy on the BPC. I think this is definitely something that plays into my strengths. And so I would have struggled an unhealthy amount if I had picked that other field that, although I have an interest in and it's something I still have an interest in, it's not for me. And you can have varied interests. You don't have to pursue all of them. Sometimes interests can just be interests. But many years later, looking back on it, I can see that that was the right redirection for me, even if I couldn't understand it at that time. And so that's a really important thing. It's sitting in your rejection. If that means being upset, then being upset. Wallow for a little while if that's what you need. But get up and keep moving. Get up and move forward. Do something different. Try something new. Try a different avenue. Don't let that rejection stump you and make you stand still. Because if you're not moving forward, then there's a problem. That's like the main thing. Just remember, it's a redirection, even if you can't see it right at this moment in time. You'll be able to reflect on it and look back on it. And I think a really a really good way of looking at it is, I don't know how many people still use Snapchat, but I do. And on my Snapchat memories, it comes up, 2 years ago you were doing this, 3 years ago you were doing that, 4 years ago you were doing this. And I think it's really interesting because you don't realize how much you've grown, how much you've been rejected in those years, how many times things have gone wrong. And then you've kept moving and you've done other things, you've tried new avenues, you've had successes in other areas that have then built your confidence. And things have worked out in some way or another. And you don't realize that until you take a second to sit back and reflect. Don't live in the past, that's not what I'm saying, but appreciate your wins, appreciate your success, appreciate and celebrate even the things that have gone right, even when you didn't realize they were going right, or you did, and you're in an even better position now than what you were before. Those are all incredibly important things. This is a bit of a controversial thing, but there's this thing called Pavlov's conditioning. Anyone who's done psychology will know this, but there was a physiologist back in the 1930s called Pavlov, and he developed this theory called classical conditioning. Now, in his lab, he had dogs, and they associated the sound of a bell to being fed. And so every time the bell went off, they started salivating because they knew they were being fed, or they could possibly be fed. But in their mind, they had associated that sound of the bell with food. And in the same way, that's a really good way to build your own confidence through associations. Now, we do this all the time, knowingly and unknowingly. So unknowingly would be, if I said the word beach, you would like associate it with sunglasses, fish and chips, hot weather, a cute swimsuit, the sea, the ocean. Maybe you think Scarborough, Blackpool. Those are your associations because you've linked them all together in your head. And in the same way, when it comes to building your confidence, you can condition yourself into thinking more positively. So thinking better about yourself. And it's an active way to change your way you think and have a more positive outlook on yourself and outlook on your life. It's something that requires reinforcement, consistency, and it'll probably difficult at the start, but it's definitely something manageable. So I read a story once of a girl who every time she was happy, she would she had a clicker on her hand, kind of like what they use in like skipping competitions, just to count, like a tally counter. And every time she was happy, she would just click that, and that would mean, and she would associate that clicking sound with her happiness. And so other people around her would associate that clicking sound with her happiness, and that would make other people happy because she was happy. And so it's a very active and very conscious way of building confidence and changing the way you think, but it's a very effective one, provided that you're consistent, provided that you have reinforcements as well. You reinforce it. Sorry, that was phrased incorrectly. But it's like waking up in the morning and doing your affirmations, or going to bed at night. No, sorry, before you go to bed at night, meditating, kind of de stressing yourself. Those are all like self care tips, but they're types of behavior that will how do I say this? They will slow your mind, they'll calm your body, they're for your own wellness and your own health. And in the same way, you can use Pavlov's conditioning to actually build your own confidence for your own health and well-being. It's kind of get rid of that negative voice in the back of your mind that's constantly like, oh, you can't do this, or that's constantly bringing up self-doubt within you. Because as you get older, you will have that self-doubt. Your brain will take into consideration all these other factors, times when things have gone wrong, times when things haven't worked out as well as what you wanted, and so that can be an off-putting factor. So building your confidence in this way, kind of forcing yourself to acknowledge your happiness and acknowledge the goodness, is a way to battle that within your head, so that kind of gets rid of that self-doubt within yourself. There is this rule that, I'm not entirely sure who said it, but it's called the 7-second rule. So if it's not going to matter in 7 years, don't be upset or angry about it for longer than 7 seconds. Now that's a little hard, I have to admit. 7 seconds is a very quick time to get over something. I personally could not do it. So I give myself at least 15 minutes, 30 if it's a particularly bad moment. And I think, okay, I'm sad, I'm upset. This is why I feel the way I feel. This is what happened. And if I could have done this, it would have gone like this, maybe. Hypothetically, because you don't know how things could have gone even if you did that. But what's done is done. After 30 minutes or after 15 minutes, I'll say to myself, what's done is done. We can't change it. Accept it and move on. And it takes a while to build that understanding within yourself. But it's good understanding, because we can sit and wallow about things that have happened 3, 4, 5, even 10 years ago. But you can't change it because it's already happened. And you might not be ready to talk about it, because even though talking about it normalizes it, you might not physically or mentally be ready to do so. But not sitting and wallowing in it is the most important thing. So give yourself some time to be upset, but definitely move on after. If that means setting a time on your phone, then set that time on your phone, and then move on once you're ready. But don't sit in that sadness, in that hypotheticals, if I had done this. Because hypothetically, yes, it could have gone that way, but it could have gone in a completely different direction too. There's always more than one outcome to a situation. There's always more than the outcome that you think will happen too. So give yourself that time and then think, okay, it's done, I'm going to move on. Some people journal and they'll write down 3 things they're grateful for, 3 things they want to change, things like that. I'd really recommend doing the 3 things you're grateful for, because it really puts things in perspective for you. When you're having a really crappy day, finding 3 things that you're grateful for will often contextualize things for you, and also it won't make that bad day or that bad moment seem as bad as what it was. And I don't know, maybe this has come across as me kind of downplaying things, which is not what I'm trying to do. But if saying that 3 things that you're grateful for will make you realize that you have a lot more to be grateful for than what you realize. And it's appreciation that will build within yourself, within your circumstances. And it's quite easy to do when things are going well, but when things are going wrong, it's even more important to be grateful, because yes, things are going wrong, but they're not as bad as what they could be. There will always be something to be grateful for. And even if you can't do three things, write down one thing and do it on a daily basis, and you'll build that gratefulness, that appreciation, that respect for your circumstance. And that's a key point, or even like a turning point for some people, because it'll contextualize things for you. And sometimes context is what you need to bring yourself down a bit, just to make things seem a lot less daunting, a lot less scary. We've spoken about celebrating your own success. Just on that point, really quickly, because I don't want to reiterate anything. No matter how big or small that success is, celebrate it. So, big things like passing a driving test, passing a degree, getting married, getting engaged, things like that, they're all really big successes that we think about when it comes to celebrations. However, little things can also be celebrated. So maybe you have social anxiety and you can't really speak to people, and maybe you went and you spoke to a stranger and you had like a really good, even if it's like a 2 minute conversation, that's a success. Celebrate it. Or you got out of bed on time, you didn't snooze your alarm, you caught your train, you got to class on time. Celebrate it. Those are little successes, especially with the way trains run at the minute. I'm not going to get into a rant about the train schedules, but little things like that are worth celebrating. And I think if you celebrate your small successes, it'll make you appreciate your bigger ones even more, and you'll like yourself more as well, because you're celebrating yourself. And it's battling that voice, like we said, it's battling that self-doubt that's in your head, it's battling that uncomfortable feeling that you get. And it'll also be easier for other people to see. When you celebrate yourself and you build your confidence, that can be seen by other people. They'll catch your vibe, they'll catch your aura, and they'll realize that, oh, okay, this person is a little different. And so they'll see that and they'll respect it. And I'm not saying you should do the things that we've mentioned today just so other people can respect it, but or for other people whatsoever. Definitely do it for yourself. But the way you treat yourself is how other people will treat you. And if you've got a good self-confidence, if you've got a good self-respect, amount of respect for yourself, and that means like battling that voice and working on it every single day so you can be a better version, other people will recognize that, and so the way they approach you will differ. They'll be a bit more confident when they approach you, and sometimes things like that are infectious. And so you might not even know it, but you doing these things for yourself is helping other people, and that's a really, really big deal. So it's something just to think about. We've talked about showing up for yourself. We've talked about celebrating your own success, not being upset about things for too long. I think that covers everything that I wanted to say. But overall, I think the main thing I want anyone who listens to this podcast to take away from it today is that you can change the way you think yourself. You can rebuild your confidence. And that's a very important way to remember things, because sometimes we feel like we're in a rut or we can't get out. We've always done things a certain way, but you can always change the way you do it. And yes, it's hard, but sometimes hard is good. There's this like quote that people who, especially like if you're a gym bro or if you're like a gym addict in some kind, or you like consuming that kind of content online and stuff, they'll say like choose your hard. So either you kind of lose the weight, or you build the muscles that you want to build, or you start lifting whatever, and you go through that level of hard to get started and kind of see the progress that you want to see. Or you can sit there and live in regret. And that's like a bit of an extreme way of thinking about it in terms of this topic of confidence and trusting yourself. But it also applies here. So you can change the way you do things and be grateful and better and think, oh, if I hadn't taken this one step, none of this would be possible, and I have a more satisfying and fulfilled life because of it. Or you can sit there and think, oh, I want to do this, or oh, I wish I did this, or I wish I started so many years ago, blah, blah, blah. It's that living with that regret of I wish, that's the really uncomfortable and awful part of it. So kind of weigh up what's your heart, really. Do you want to constantly sit and be upset and wallow over things and have that self-doubt in your head, or do you want that to change? And so changing means changing certain habits that you have, and definitely don't do everything at once. It's a slow, gradual process. So baby steps until you can start walking, and then once you're walking, you can start running. Definitely build. But you have to start somewhere. And maybe you'll take something away from this podcast and that'll be a part of it. Or maybe this is just a bit of a kick up the butt that you needed to get started. But whatever it is, I hope that you have taken something from this and that it is helpful for you. And with that, we have finished today's episode. Thank you so much for listening. Just want to reiterate the disclaimer that I put at the start, and that is that the information provided in this podcast is for general informational purposes only. It should not be considered as professional advice. And if you do require expert advice, it is encouraged that you consult with relevant experts or professionals, and that the opinions expressed on this podcast are my own and they do not reflect the University of Law at all. Thank you so much for listening.